What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough, here on RotoGrinders. 2 more weeks left on the golf calendar before the late November/December winter break. We get about 6 or 7 weeks off on the golf calendar. That's the off season before things pick back up in the new year. So 2 more events to break down for you here before that break, and we'll try to make those count from a DFS perspective. Usual 2 co-hosts with you. As usual, I am Justin Van Zuiden, STL Cardinals 84. Have Derek Farnsworth, a.k.a. Notorious, alongside. Noto, how was your week?
Oh, man, it was brutal. Had Carson Young outright at 75-1. Ended up a shot shy. Had Max Grazerman outright. Ended up a couple of shots shy. And then Model Love, Justin lower, but for whatever reason, I didn't play him. So, yeah, a week of almost. How did you do?
Yeah, Lower and Ekro, 2 guys that I have played quite a bit throughout the fall, but not this week. So it was pretty much a hollow week. I did 30 lineups. I had 16, I believe, 6 of 6 lineups, like 52%, and just didn't have anything with a combination of guys at the top. Ended up losing money with a 52% 6 of 6 and 30-some% 5 of 6. So. Had a decent, amount of guys make it to the weekend. I think I only had 3 missed cuts in my player pool out of like 24. So it was decent, but yeah, when you get that, set up into the weekend where you've got 20 out of your 23 guys in your player pool through the cut, you just kind of feel like you're going to walk away with a pretty good week, and just didn't break that way.
Yeah, feel ya. So now we get to Bermuda, our favorite tournament of the year.
Yeah, pretty weak field last week. This one might be worse. I don't know really how to compare last week and this week. They're both pretty bad. And I just when you look at the field that we had last week and the one we have this week, and I know these fields are always pretty rough, but this seems to be the time of year where you really start to notice the live guys that have gone, and maybe not the big names like Rahm or something like that, but some of those mid-level guys that are on the live tour that, would have played some of these events. Like, I don't know. I know these fields are always weaker, but last week and this week, I mean, they seem particularly watered down to me.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. And yeah, I just don't love the way the PGA Tour is set up right now. It just doesn't seem like these events have a whole lot of meaning. And I don't know. Are they necessarily needed? We can't even get a shot factor for these things. It's just not a great experience for the users or the viewers. And I don't know. Shouldn't complain too much. I love golf. Love the sweat, but it's just not the same without shot tracker and some of the big names in the field.
Yeah, we will have a better field next week for the RSM, and should have the shot link back for that tournament. But this is one that even I think maybe 2 years ago, they had trouble even filling the field, maybe still some remnants of the pandemic at that point. And I know Bermuda had some travel restrictions after COVID hit. So, that made it difficult for them to completely fill this tournament for a couple of years. They've reduced the size of the field, so we're at 120 now, which they have been able to fill. But it's really weak at the top. It's basically the same refrain that we talked about last week. And if you go by, official world golf ranking, the highest guy in this field is Lucas Glover, I believe, who is 48 right now. So, it's Lucas Glover's at 48. I'm scrolling through the list right at the moment. And then I haven't found the second highest guy is Mackenzie Hughes at 63, unless I missed somebody as I was scrolling through. I don't think I did. So you've got, and then going down to 70, you got McNeely at 68. So you've got 3 guys in the top 70 of the official world golf rankings in this tournament this week. That's pretty rough.
It's pretty rough. Shout out to J3 in the chat. I always wanted some more Dean on the shows. I'd love to get Dean's thoughts on the Butterfield Bermuda. He probably has some strong takes for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any major takeaways. Wesley Bryan, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, ended up finishing in the top 10 last week. That was kind of nice to see. Nico Echevarria, after his win, ended up playing pretty well with the T6. But yeah, it's really just whoever catches fire. Those greens are massive. The fairways are massive. and Ekro just kind of got on a birdie streak and couldn't miss on the greens.
And that's what it takes to win. The scoring was pretty tough the first day. It was fairly windy. Got a little more birdie friendly the last 3 days. So if you look at the scoring average, it was a little bit rougher the first day, but then pretty straightforward after that. I know that we've seen the cut at that event get to -4, -5 a few times. Only got to -2 last week, so that's goes to show the more difficult scoring conditions there on the first day. But otherwise, if you made the weekend, you had to make plenty of birdies to stay in the mix, and Ekro did that with the 66-63 pair of rounds on the weekend. Even bogeyed the final hole, his par 5, to stay up by 1. So probably played that a little bit safe. I didn't catch the final hole, but and we don't have the shot link data to go back on, but it was deserved win for him. I mean, he's had some moments this year. Just wish I would have been on him last week compared to the many times that I have been. But those are the breaks, and we'll dust ourselves off and move on to the next week. So anything else you want to? I mean, last week most of the more popular plays made the cut. Johnny Vegas was maybe a little bit of a disappointment. Matty Schmid, and I don't know what to do with Keith Mitchell these days. It's been rough for Keith here in the fall. I think I got to be off of Mitchell for now. I don't know, but Mitchell and Schmid were kind of the big surprises for me last week.
Yeah, I'm over 1,000 on Keith Mitchell now, so this is brutal. But yeah, Ekro actually, he was greenside in 2 on 18, and his chip came right back to his feet, and then he chipped it onto the fringe. And so I was thinking, okay, if he doubles, then maybe Carson Young has a chance, but didn't end up happening. Young did have like a 40-footer for eagle that could have put it into a playoff, but yeah, so yeah, Keith Mitchell was brutal. I do think it's a good bounce back spot for Matty Schmid, but we'll get there. Let's close the book on the old Worldwide Technology Championship.
We'll close the book on the Worldwide Technology and move on to the more exciting Butterfield Bermuda Championship. 6th time we've had this event at Port Royal. So it's we got some course history if you're interested in using that as a guide this week. We got 5 years worth on this course. And typically an event that generally has a weaker field. You look at some of the winners of this tournament in the past, and it's basically a mix of guys that hadn't won a whole lot of other events leading up to their victories here. If we go back to the first time was 2019, that was Brendan Todd when he was kind of just starting to come out of his poor run of form. Brian Gay won in 2020, so that's a couple of shorter hitters for sure. Lucas Herbert in 2021, Seamus Power in 2022. So there's a couple longer hitters. And Camilo Villegas won here last year, kind of out of nowhere, with Alex Noren being the runner-up. Scoring has kind of been all over the place, depending on the wind. 24 under a couple times, 15 under a couple times. Seems like the wind will be the biggest factor. And I did look right before the show. 20-plus mile-an-hour winds projected for 3 of the 4 days this week. So looks like we might not get as favorable scoring conditions as we had last year. So what do you make of the course this week?
Yeah, the wind's kind of the big story for me. We've seen a couple winners at -15 here. I'm kind of thinking that's going to be the score that we're going to look at. So yeah, Thursday, 30-mile-per-hour gusts. Sunday, 25. Saturday, 25 with some rain potentially too. So we could be looking at a potential wave split, wave advantage if you do want to check the weather on Wednesday night. Wind can obviously change pretty quickly, but I will be building some stacks on both sides of the draw. As far as the course, one of the shortest courses on the PGA Tour. I was looking at Data Golf's course fit tool, and driving accuracy is much lower than, much less important than most courses. Driving distance is much less important than most courses. So essentially, this is just second shot and in type of course. I'm looking at guys that good with their irons, and then good short game, especially with the wind projected to pick up in 3 of those 4 days. I do think it's going to make it tougher. So you're going to have a good short game in order to contend. Maybe looking at a little bit of bogey avoidance instead of birdie or better. Guys that play well on shorter courses like Harbor Town, Colonial, the one in Hawaii. Don't mind looking at some of those comp courses. That's just about do it for me.
Yeah, I think looking at bogey avoidance a little bit more this week with the predicted weather, I think is certainly something that makes sense. looking at scrambling a little bit more. So taking those factors into consideration with knowing that guys are just going to try to be in a good spot off the tee and not a driver-heavy course there, as you mentioned. So I would expect the winning score to probably be closer to that 15, 16 under range that we've seen in the years where it is a little bit more windy here. Definitely a week where we want to check and see if there does end up being a wave advantage. Because of that wind, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to predict, though, because it does look like they're calling for some potential thunderstorms the first day on Thursday. So if that interrupts play, that could throw a wrench into those plans. But if you're building a lot of lineups, then it might make sense to make some stacks of both sides of the tee time waves to kind of have yourself covered if there does end up being an edge there. Anything else on the housekeeping front before we dive in here?
Now let's get to the player pool.
All right. As I mentioned, it's not that exciting with Lucas Glover being the highest official world golf ranking player in the field. I actually expected Glover to be the most expensive golfer. That is a tongue twister for you. It kind of surprised me when he was down the board at least, a decent amount. I think there's, 6 guys ahead of him on DraftKings. So just like last week, not that much over 10K. Seamus Power at 10.5, Mackenzie Hughes at 10.3. And we've got another week where the odds are kind of all over the map. No true favorite high-end guy in the field, which kind of gives us the same type of setup as what we had last week, with just a couple guys above 10K and the discussion of whether or not I need to prioritize one. Like right now, we've got Seamus Power at 30%. If he's 30% owned, I just think that's entirely too high. I don't feel like I have to roster him. He doesn't seem like he's that much better than a lot of the guys in the 9Ks. So I really don't love Hughes either. So, I think you can forego both of them. I'd take Power if I had to pick one. But are you starting with one of those two 10K golfers?
I'm kind of with you. You don't need to force it, but at the same time, you can get Seamus and one of the guys in the 9Ks and still build a decent lineup. My favorite play of the week is going to be in the 9Ks, so I'm definitely not forcing either of these guys. Seamus has been pretty solid. He's got 3 top 15s in his last 4 starts. He's also made his last 4 cuts here with the win the last time he teed it up. So I have no issue with Power. I don't love the ownership. Don't have a strong take on Hughes. This is typically the type of course where he plays well. And, coming off the President's Cup, he finished T8 the next week. So maybe he can get it going a little bit if he ends up being lower owned than what we have him at now. I might have a little interest in tournaments. But like you, I think starting the 9Ks makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's where I'll be starting with most of my lineups. You've got McNeely leading off that 9K range at 9,900. He is coming off a 6th place finish last week. Ben Griffin, who I kind of highlighted as my favorite play last week, he did okay. Not special for his salary tag by any means, but continues to make cuts. Doug Gim was the popular play a week ago. Struggled on the first day, did bounce back to make the cut, but he's at 9.5K. Then we've got Glover, who I mentioned earlier as the top golfer in the field via official world golf ranking. Justin Lower, Sam Stevens, Schmid, and Putnam, your 9K options this week. So quite a few. Who do you like? You mentioned your favorite play being in here. So who do we got?
Yes, my favorite play is Ben Griffin, number 1 in my model this week. He's been pretty solid, 3 top 25s in his last 4 starts. He's played a bunch in the fall. 2 for 2 here with the 3rd place finish in 2022. And again, if you just don't look at off the tee metrics, he's probably the best in the field. He's a lead on approach, a lead around the green, top 5 Bermuda putter as well. So love starting with Ben Griffin. I went through and I noticed a lot of the really good ball strikers don't have good course history here. Doug Gim and Lucas Glover being 2 of them. I just think that short game matters more here than in most places. So probably going to be underweight on them. Don't mind. I don't know, McNeely, his best weapon's his driver, so that worries me a little bit. I like Justin Lower, but now he's $1,800 more and going to be more popular than he was last week. That never seems like a good combo. So I'll probably just go down to Matty Schmid. I think it's a good bounce back spot for him. Missed the cut by 2, not to worry about that. Was 3rd place last year and pretty good course fit for me.
Yeah, I don't mind Glover. If you basically just look at the talent level of Glover compared to a lot of the other golfers in this field, I just think that he kind of rises to the top. I expected him, as I mentioned, to be more expensive. You mentioned that the course history is not great here, but if you look at the last 6 months, second in this field on approach, and 4 straight top 25s coming in. So I'll ride that form a bit over the course history, and given the reasonable price tag for what I expected, I'll play some Glover this week. I'm with you on Griffin. Those are the 2 guys I wrote up in my content in this range this week. So Griffin, Glover, and I think you can make a good case, as you mentioned, for Schmid as well this week as a bounce back spot after a poor week last week. Certainly going to be lower ownership on him than what we saw a week ago. Hitting the price tag, I think I don't have what he was last week, but I feel like he was maybe a little bit higher last week than where he is right now. Or in any case, he hasn't really gone up. So, any other thoughts on this 9K range?
Yeah, I've got to mention Andrew Putnam at 9K flat. Basically has the same statistical profile as Ben Griffin. He's lead on approach. He's actually better than Griffin around the green, and a better Bermuda putter. He hasn't shown a ton of upside, but he's just top 25 machine, tends to play these shorter courses well. So I like Andrew Putnam quite a bit too.
All right, as we head down into the 8K range here. So you mentioned batting 0 for 1,000 on Keith Mitchell. I'm approaching 0 for 1,000 on Daniel Berger. I hopped back on the Daniel Berger train too soon when nobody was riding alongside. Justifiably so. He had a pretty poor stretch over the summer where he missed the cut in, I believe, 5 straight events. Yes. Rocket Mortgage, John Deere, Isco, Barracuda, 3M, all weak fields, missed the cut in all of them. And that was pretty much the stretch of tournaments where I was playing him on a weekly basis. Probably played him 4 out of those 5 weeks. Hopped off the train, and then suddenly, of course, you get a couple made cuts. 7th at the Sanderson Farms, a couple more made cuts, though not spectacular finishes, and then 20th last week. So it seems like the rust is finally off for Daniel Berger. And again, if you're going for overall talent level in a weak field, he's more expensive now. Might still serve to curb the ownership a little bit. I mean, we've got Berger at 9% right now. So if that's the case, I'll sprinkle some Daniel Berger. But again, keep in mind that I'm 0 for a lot trying to pick him right this year. So take that with a grain of salt if you don't trust my hunch on Berger. But plenty of other names in this 8K range. Brendan Todd, Echeverria playing really well. Vegas coming off a miscut, and Novak. Those are kind of your mid to high 8K range guys. Mark Hubbard, Nick Taylor, Kevin Yu, and Jacob Bridgman rounding out the lower part of this range. Don't love that lower part of the 8Ks quite as much. But what are you looking at in here?
Yeah, I don't like a lot in the 8Ks. I don't mind a little bit of Novak. I just haven't played any Daniel Berger. He's been fine recently. He's got 2 top 20s in the last 2.5 years. So I don't know. The game's definitely trending back, but if you look at his stats, they're just kind of all over the place. I don't really trust him this week. He's never played this event, at least not in the last 5 years. But yeah, Novak's made his last 2 cuts here. Brendan Todd's like the great course fit, but he hasn't been very good lately, and he's kind of
past winner.
Past winner. I was going to say he's getting the course history bump. Is Brian Gay in this field? I think he won here too. I was looking.
It wouldn't surprise me because he's not. But there's a lot of. I don't want to disparage him, but there's a lot of bad golfers at the DA points is in the field.
Again, I think Gay was like 400 to 1 the week he won here. So definitely one of those weird events. I like Bridgman the best of anybody. Just kind of been solid, 3 top 30s in his last 4 starts. Really good short game. Makes a lot of birdies, doesn't make a lot of bogeys. So he's probably the only guy I'm really actively targeting here.
Yeah, not a range where I'll have a lot of exposure, and that is part of the reason why I'm going to play a little bit of Berger as well, simply because there's not a whole lot in the 8Ks that I feel good about. I'll chase the theoretical upside, but again, my track record on him, not great. Vegas at high ownership with the potential of putting being more of a thing this week. I'm probably out on him. And I just don't have strong takes on Todd. Echeverria, probably not the spot you want to start buying in. I will not have a whole lot of exposure to the 8Ks in general. I think the 7Ks, there's a lot of guys in here that you save a little bit more money, and I think they're just as good, if not better, overall plays than the 8Ks. As usual, we'll kind of split it up into a couple ranges here. I won't read off all the names, but 75 to 7,900, that upper part of the range, I think you can maybe make a case for about 6 guys. So I'll let you have the floor to start on the upper part of the 7Ks.
I'll start with a guy that we both have tagged in Wesley Bryan at 7,500. Hasn't played a ton on the PGA Tour the last couple of years, but he's played 4 times in the fall. T13, T37, T21, T6. As everyone knows, I watch a lot of YouTube golf, and they film a ton of their content in Bermuda. So they're very comfortable. He's actually paired with his brother this week.
I was gonna say I wasn't sure if you had seen that yet, but yeah, they're both in the field and they're paired together. Which look, if you're shooting a lot of YouTube videos there and kind of a low stress event, then you're playing with your brother. I can't think of and you've been playing well. It's probably about as low stress of an environment as it gets for him, I would guess.
Yep, and they're very competitive with each other, which I think is a good thing. So
side bets going on, I'm sure.
Yeah. And like historically, off the tee's been his worst metric, right? And driver's not all that important here. So love Wesley Bryan. We'll see. He doesn't project all that well, but I'll play him anyway. I like Grayson Sigg at 7,800. He's been playing pretty well in the fall. A couple top 25s at this event. Alex Molly's got some pretty good course history here. I'm going to be fading Carson Young. So the reason why I liked him last week so much is because he was like dead last in the field around the green. And, everyone's going to be hitting those greens 85% in regulation. And this week, I think that's going to cost him. So I'm going to be fading Carson Young at 7,800, hoping he's going to be popular. I like Whaley. I like Norlander. Who are some of your favorites?
Yeah, Norlander I like as well. It's a solid call, I think, on Carson Young. At that ownership, I'm probably out. We do obviously both like Wesley Bryan as well. He's probably my favorite in this range. It's probably the kiss of death with both of us being on him this week. But yeah, if you're looking at, instead of Carson Young, I think going up to Sigg or Smalley or Rico Hoey will continue to be my favorite. The one guy that I have hit pretty much, I've played him probably every week during the fall, and he's got to have one of the longer made cut streaks on tour now. I think he's at 13 in a row. And so until he gives me a reason not to play him and his salary is still under the average price that you have per golfer, somewhat reasonable ownership here at 10, 12%, not mega chalk by any means. And as I mentioned last week, Filipino golfers tend to, play well on these coastal type of courses. So I don't think the elements will bother him. So I like Hoey at 7,900. Agree on most of those other guys you mentioned, particularly Norlander and, of course, Wesley Bryan. So anything else above 7,500 for you?
I think that'll do it for me.
All right. Let's go ahead and move down to the bottom part of the 7K range. It's a little less exciting down here. My favorite guy in the lower part of the 7K range is going to be David Lipsky. Another strong finish for him last week. Along with Wesley Bryan, finished inside the top 10. Seems to play these types of courses well himself. Trying to pull up his... I had made a little mixed condition model with some of the things I was looking at on Betsperts this week, and he's, I believe, 15th in that one, obviously priced well below that kind of area. So he's my favorite guy in the lower part of the 7K range. If you're, wanting to go for putting, make somebody like Justin Suh at 7,300. I think you can make a case for if you think it's just going to be about saving par and making putts this week. Pearson Cootie's been putting the ball pretty well also, but Lipsky by far my favorite in the lower part of the 7K range. Probably sprinkle a little Nate Lashley in my player pool as well, but it does start to drop off as you get towards this bottom part. So what are you looking at to round out the 7K range?
Yeah, I don't feel nearly as good about the lower sevens as I do about the high sevens, but I do like Zach Blair. He's top 25 in this field in approach around the green and bogey avoidance. Made the cut here in his only appearance. Been playing okay in the fall. 7,100 seems like a decent price. Sung Yul No's been playing well on the Korn Ferry Tour if you want to give him a look. The model loves Lashley and KH Lee at 7,400. That's pretty much it for me. Maybe Chad Ramey if you're building a bunch of lineups, but yeah, it kind of drops off pretty quickly for me.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this tends to be the kind of spot I think where we start to see the lower end of the tour and the guys that have gone to live. I mean, some of these guys that are getting these final spots, you know, Greg Koch, DA Points. I mean, you got guys that haven't played on the PGA Tour in years. And I mean, there's names at the bottom of this field that I've never even heard of. And I know there's always a handful of those, but I mean, we've only got 120 golfers this week, and it's just a death zone under 7K. I mean, Kevin Kisner's down there, and he's got over 1% projected ownership just because people are going to recognize his name. I mean, MJ Defoe, we've seen him play well in stretches all the way down at 6,400. But nobody under 7K. We haven't seen consistent form from any of these guys. Ches Reavie is somebody who grades out decently well in projections and would probably be my first click under 7K, though I think I'm going to try not to go. I mean, you got Ramey and Sung Yul No, who you mentioned at the bottom of the 7Ks. Those two will probably make my player pool, and I might not go underneath that level. But anybody in the 6Ks that's got your eye in the model or anything else?
Absolutely zero players in the 6K are going to make my player pool. I just don't feel great about any of them. Ches Reavie rates out the best, like you mentioned. But, I mean, he's got miscut, T54, miscut in his last 4 starts. Hasn't played here before. So I think we can just – I mean, without anybody like an elite golfer to spend up on, I don't see a reason to go down there.
Yeah, we don't. Lost my earpiece. We have just the 2 golfers above 10K. And, again, I'm not getting super excited about either of those guys. So I don't see a need to dip down into the 6s. There's obviously going to be, somebody that pops out of here like we talk about in these weeks. I don't know how many golfers that is, but it seems like it's maybe 40 or 50, and we've only got 120 in the field. I mean, Hayden Buckley, another guy that, again, we've seen these guys perform in the past, but nobody that has any consistent form. And in our lineup HQ, it's just solid red ratings there for almost all of those guys in the 6K range. And we just can't make this the last week and this week. I mean, these 2 tournaments are rough. It's tough to build momentum and try to get super excited for them. I mean, it just kind of is what it is with these late season tournaments. And a lot of times I'll try to expand my player pool a little bit more. But I don't know, this week with only 120 golfers, it's tough. So I wanted to show, I'm going to screenshot our SimLabs tool again. And if once again we look at our projections versus the field, and where the green bars on here are the guys that we project much better than the projected ownership. So those are the guys that, in theory, if you trust our projections, those are the ones you want to roster. And Rico Hoey, who I like quite a bit, is the top guy by far in this. Bridgman and Sung Yul No, a couple guys that Noto mentioned, are next on the list. Wesley Bryan up near the top of the green bars. Norlander up near the top of the green bars. So that's a lot of guys that we like this week. I think we're kind of in agreement. A lot of the red bars, as usual, you got to pay up for somebody. So the red bars are going to go to the highest priced golfers generally. Some of the highest priced golfers who don't project quite as well. Hughes, I'm off this week. Echeverria, I'm off this week. Hubbard, I'm off this week. So some of these other guys that it's just a slight negative, I will play. But I think we like a lot of the guys that are going to grade out better in our projections compared to field level ownership this week, it looks like.
Yep.
All right. With that, we're going to pass on the snake draft this week. So we did a 3-man snake draft last week. And unsurprisingly, the third person outside of Noto and myself won. Like I say, we're free money in these things. We're probably going to have to wait till the new year to crank these back up. But M. Herring 87, congrats on your $13.50 donation from Noto and I. My team was horrendous. Noto's team was a little bit better, but M. Herring, all 7 of his golfers made the cut, and Noto and I both had a couple missed cuts on ours, and I had also drafted Cameron Young, who withdrew. So solid week all around on the snake draft last week. But next week should have a little bit more excitement, stronger field. We'll put this one in the rearview mirror, and we'll look to end the 2024 season on a high note. So with that, Noto, anything else, or are you ready to get out of here?
Let's get out of here. One more event. Hopefully it's a much better event next week, and then get a nice little break. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Yeah,
it'll be a nice event down in Georgia, and we can make the case for Keith Mitchell again next week. I'm sure he'll be in the field. So, all right. With that, thanks as always to Steve, working hard, producing behind the scenes for us. Thanks to Noto for joining me. I'm Justin. We hope you have a great week, everybody. Take care. We'll catch you later.